You're a filmmaker, Jeffrey, as we said before on your interview and the various other videos you've been on here at Midnight's Edge. You've actually been working on a horror film called Bubbleheads. So obviously you're a huge horror fan.
Yes.
Now, as far as horror films go, where would you rank Halloween, the original 1978 classic?
Oh, wow. Yeah. I would rank, it's top 3 for me. It's top 3.
I'd have to agree with that. That's probably about where it's at in my rankings as well. Well, speaking of Halloween, we've had all kinds of news over the last few months about the new film, including the news that the verified news yesterday that John Carpenter was going to be doing the music for the film, which we reported a while back. We also reported that Nick Castle was going to be in the film as Michael Myers. There is some truth to that, but he's not going to be playing Michael Myers that much. He's just going to have a cameo. A stunt performer named James Jude Courtney will actually play him most of the time. I'm assuming it'll just be for like some close-ups or when we get the right movement, stuff like that. We also have some news about the cast. Judy Greer will play Karen Strode, Laurie's daughter, while Andy Matichek will play Greer's daughter, also the granddaughter to Curtis's character, who will be returning to the franchise for the first time since Halloween Resurrection, and this film will actually retcon every film since the 1978 original film, which we've also reported here on in the past. According to the reports, Laurie Strode comes to her final confrontation with Michael Myers, who has haunted her since she narrowly escaped his killing spree on Halloween 4 decades ago. So, Jamie Lee Curtis talked a little bit about the film. She says it's terrifying. She saw the trailer, which I kind of figure we're going to see soon because we just got a poster the other day, and it looks pretty cool. What do you think about the poster, Jeffrey?
I think it was pretty intense. I love the detail, the attention to detail in the mask. It looks like that, Mike is ready to put in some serious work and damage in the film.
At first glance, I was like, what did they do? Go get Shatner now to get a mold of his face for the mask? But, no. Well, no, actually, it's pretty interesting. But no, it's supposed to look like that because the rubber is deteriorated, which is kind of what they did in the Rob Zombie film. So I kind of get that, even though by now that mask would be completely gone, no matter where it was kept, probably. But moving on, she goes on to say that they went full tilt boogeyman, and I've never said that in my life, and I will say full tilt boogeyman for the rest of the year as I go around talking about this. Curtis also shared her idea for what the title of the movie should have been. There was an idea of, what do you call it? If I had my druthers, I probably would have called it Halloween Retold, because it's being retold. It's the original story in many, many, many ways, just retold 40 years later with my granddaughter. The cast also includes Virginia Ginny Gardner, Miles Robbins, Dylan Arnold, and Drew Scheid of Stranger Things. Interesting. So basically we're getting kind of a rehash of the original film, it almost sounds like, but this time it's her granddaughter. I don't know. I'm a little confused. You could have kept Halloween too, I guess. The only reason you'd want to retcon anything after the first film would be if you don't want Laurie to be his sister. That's the only thing I could see you'd want to change, really. I mean, that's where I'm kind of confused here. And if this is going to be the last film and you're not going to continue on, because originally there was no intention to make Laurie the sister, but John Carpenter didn't have a reason for Michael to keep going after Laurie in the hospital in the second film. So after a few beers, he decided to make her the sister. That's his story.
Yeah, in my opinion, I think that Laurie has played a major part, in this franchise. And the fact that she's such a major part of the story, I don't think it's a good idea to necessarily retcon her, that character. I think it's, to me, it gave the story a lot more exposition, the fact that she was related to Michael Myers. But I do understand why they want to retcon it. I'm still interested to see how this movie will turn out. I have I do have high hopes for it going into it.
I'm confused, but I'm also intrigued. So it's like, let me see it, I guess. I'm ready. I'm ready for the trailer, at least. Let me see what you got, because if it turns out to be just a cash-in and a complete retread and there's nothing new brought to the table and the only reason that Jamie Lee Curtis was brought to just sell this movie, I'll be upset. I'll feel like Halloween Resurrection all over again. I don't know how you feel about that movie, but to me it was a big punch in the gut when they killed Laurie the way they did.
I just didn't agree with how she died. It was just poorly done, poorly written, but at that point in time, it was about money because, let's just be honest, they had already established a brand, so they knew people were going to go check it out anyway, and that's exactly what happened now. And that movie left us, it left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouth.
Well, basically, you gave the baby a bath when you did H2O. They cleaned up all the dirty shit, but unfortunately when it came to Resurrection, they threw the baby out with the bathwater. They decided to reboot the entire thing. The first Rob Zombie's Halloween was okay, but it suffers from the issue that, okay, I don't mind her being the sister, like you said, that's a big part of this series, but if you were to change it up a little bit, one thing that making her the sister did was kind of humanize Michael Myers. It demystified him in a lot of ways, and of course the Rob Zombie version embraced that, and that's probably one of the reasons it works, because his whole movie is built on who was Michael Myers originally, what pushed him to this point, what made him the monster he is. It really tore the mask off, even more so than making Laurie the sister in the second film. I'm sure you're familiar with the phrase, you demystify the monster, it doesn't make them so scary anymore. When you learn too much about the villain or the bad guy or the monster, kind of the same thing here is what I'm getting at. At least that's the way I felt, to where by the time we got to the second Rob Zombie Halloween film, I was totally, that film I have just complete disdain for. The only thing I'll say about that Halloween film, the second Rob Zombie one, is that they had Laurie act like a person who had been through that kind of trauma would probably act in real life. That's probably the only thing remotely good about that movie, and that's all as far as I'm going to go on that.
Yeah, I mean, the movie had its flaws. The Rob Zombie films, that is. They had their flaws. At that particular time, I liked it a little bit.
I will say the first Halloween Rob Zombie one is the best of these remakes that we've gotten in the last decade. I will give it that.
Definitely, for sure. Like the backstory in his Halloween, definitely I was impressed by that because he did humanize Michael Myers. He gave him a backstory as to, why he became what he became. And, specifically, I remember that scene where he beat the bully up in the woods, if you can recall that one. That one I thought was like really interesting. I didn't have an issue with what Zombie had done because that was his vision. But yeah, it didn't resonate with everyone else.
Right, the first of the two just did it better, but to bring it back around to this new Halloween and how it relates to it, is I can see if that's what they're trying to do here is turn Michael back into the monster. They want to make him the shark again, the non-stop killing machine, and instead of the brother. And that's fine if you're going to continue the series on, but what's the point of doing that if this is supposed to be the end-all, be-all, nail in the coffin? Which we know if this movie makes money, that's not going to be the case. It never is. But I frankly get tired of them saying, oh, this is going to be the last one. This is your Freddy's Dead. This is your Jason Goes to Hell. This is your H2O. And then we get more and more garbage after that. Here, the thing is okay, fine. If you want to put a final nail in that coffin and let Jamie Lee Curtis have one more crack at it, fine. But why retcon all that stuff? You could have kept H2O. You could have kept Halloween 2. Or even if you're going to retcon H2O, fine. But keep her the sister. Otherwise, what is the point of having her in the movie? That's what I was kind of getting around to. And I hate saying that, but it's true. Really, if you're not going to have any connection to the, to the other, why? Really, 40 years later, this guy's going to turn around and go stalk this woman who he has no connection with, other than he stalked her 40 years before and didn't get her? He's got that bad a completion anxiety?
That's another thing, as I mentioned before, like, she's played a major part of this franchise, and it's just like, okay, well, him being related to her gave him more of a motive as to why he was, going after her in the first place. Now it's just like, okay, like, why is he, you know what I mean? Like, what's the motive now? What would that be? You know what I mean? Other than he's, okay, he stalks babysitters, but why her in particular? At first it was his sister. Now if you retcon that, assuming that they are retconning that, if you do retcon that, okay, well, what differentiates her from any other babysitter or whatever?
Right, that's true. They aren't really necessarily saying that. You got a point there. But again, if they're going to retcon 2, what's the point? That's where I don't get it. I don't understand what the catch is. And that's the only catch I can see, because that's the only relevance 2 has outside of the first film. Because otherwise they're fairly, I wouldn't say interchangeable, but they're all kind of part of the same story up until that point. So I don't know. And like I said, if Jamie Lee Curtis were to come out and say, "Oh, I wanted to redo this to give Laurie, you know, one more shot at it. I don't think she went out right, blah blah blah," and then this way they could carry on, and I'm just handing off the torch kind of thing, you know, then I'd understand, because I'd be like, okay, they're going to turn him back into the Jaws shark killer, you know, like I said, to where he's just after babysitters, period, you know, and that'd be fine if that's what you're going to do. But if you're going to make this another H2O, that's what it's turning into, it sounds like to me. And H2O was good enough for what it was at the time. That's all there is to it. Him getting his head chopped off at the end by Laurie was, hey, that worked for me.
It turned out that it wasn't even actually him.
Oh, and I don't buy that shit. If you watch them back to back, it makes no sense. It makes absolutely no sense. And I said that in the theater watching, because I probably had just watched H2O before I went to see it, because I was that big of a fan. I know I went to see it on opening night. And I just remember getting more upset and more upset through the whole movie up until we got to the part with the other kids. And by that point, I didn't give a shit anymore. And this was all before the opening credits.
Exactly. That part kind of, it really rubbed me the wrong way. It left a sour taste in my mouth. To me, you know, that was just a cash grab, period.
Yeah, because if you'd have chopped that off, left Laurie out of the whole deal, and just had it about these kids being in his house, that was enough. I'd have accepted it a lot more as a sequel. And see, because if you watch it, if I kind of forget that part in the beginning, and I watch the rest of the movie for what it is, it's actually not that bad.
Right. No, it's not that bad at all. It's just the Laurie part that they sort of force-fed us that part.
And the sad part is they had to sue her to be in that movie. They had a loophole in her contract for H2O that she would come back, I think it was for 2 more sequels. But she was under the understanding that this was going to be the last one when it came to H2O. But of course, after H2O was a huge hit, Dimension decided to use their option to have her come back for another one. She didn't want to do it. She's like, it's done. It's over with. I don't want anything, just, you know, whatever. And I don't remember for how long, but I know they were in court for a while, going back and forth about this deal. Finally, she got some hefty payday, I think, out of it, as long as she did one of them, and that was it for the contract then, I think, and her character was killed off, and that was it. So it was a messy ordeal. So I kind of get to where, you know, Jamie Lee Curtis might want to make amends with the series itself, and especially being able to bring John Carpenter back to the series, because initially she wanted John Carpenter to direct H2O. I don't know, he's not directing this, to be clear. I don't know if anybody thinks that's what I'm saying. He's just producing this and he's doing the music, but he still is a part of it. So it's, and again, like I said before, if you don't count part 3, this is the first time Carpenter will have been involved since the second film. So
yeah, I'm definitely happy for his involvement. And honestly, at this point, Blumhouse, they have a great track record with horror films, and I believe that they'll respect what Carpenter wanted to do, you know, and it will definitely be a collaborative effort on both sides. So I'm definitely, with that alone, I'm excited to see, you know, what they've come up with and the final vision that's going to be on screens.
Yeah, I'm cautiously optimistic. But what do you guys think about this out there? Are you excited for this Halloween movie? Are you a little, on the rails about it, not sure, kind of like I am in some points, but also excited? I want to know what you guys think. It sounds like Jeffrey's excited, a lot more excited than I am. I'm a little bit more scared, but not scared in a good way.
Yeah, I'm excited. You know, I'm just going to be optimistic going into it just because of the parties that are involved. I hope that there's going to be some interesting kills, not some boring, don't insult the audience. Just do not insult the audience. Please do not do that. And make the kills believable. Please do that.
Right. You've kind of convinced me to be a little bit more optimistic, Jeffrey, because talking to you, I realized how shitty the last 2 films in both versions of the series were. So it can't get any worse.
It seems like Carpenter he's gotten, he's been away from it a little bit. He's gotten a chance to miss it, and now he's just like, you know what? Let me put my, best foot forward and give this a go. And he's involved with, Blumhouse, who's earned our trust. So let's just be optimistic about it going forward and see what they do.
I'm going to go with that. You've convinced me. It is cool to see him proactive, too, because for the last few years, he's kind of turned into that crotchety old, just give me my check and shut up. I don't want to talk about it.
Exactly.
But I'd love to know what you guys think.
With the recent changes to YouTube's monetization policy, we'd like to ask that you please consider supporting the channel through Patreon. As thanks, Patreon members will receive early notification of mini-documentaries, special behind-the-scenes making of the Edge videos, outtakes, bloopers, lost episodes, and more. Support tiers start for as little as $1 a month. Check the link in the description. Thank you.